Welcome everybody, my name is Nairi and I've been a foster carer in the past and now I'm an adopter of 2 teenage boys. And a question that was asked by one of my members was to do a video around what it's like to adopt with chronic illness. And this is, a difficult subject for me. So I'm going to speak on my own experiences, and I'm also going to point out that when I first adopted, I didn't have chronic illness. I had things wrong with me, but I didn't have chronic illness. But now I do. So let's get cracking. The first thing I want to say about it is, in my experience of looking at other adopters, nobody knows what's around the corner. So you could start off a very healthy adopter with nothing wrong with you, nothing to declare to social workers, and in a few years' time you could actually have something wrong with you that you didn't anticipate. And I think that is life. And I think for a lot of us that have been on the adoption journey for a while, you realise that your path does not run smooth, your journey is never smooth. And so having chronic illness is just one of the things that could be difficult to face, could be one of the difficult challenges. And when social workers first meet you for adoption, they will ask you to declare major health issues. And I want to say right now that not all of those things will really rule you out for adoption. It just depends if things are under control, and it depends on the severity. So if you do have chronic illness and it is debilitating, it does hold you back, then there will be some major questions asked about whether you're going to be able to provide the stimulating environment that a child needs, whether you're going to be able to keep up with those children. So yeah, those are the questions they're going to ask. Are you going to be able to function daily for that child and be there for them? And if the answer to that is no, then obviously you're not going to be able to adopt. If the answer to that is yes most days because things are kept under control, then you may well still be able to adopt. But it's going to be down to that agency, that social worker, and the child or children that you're thinking of taking on. It's going to depend on that match as well. So yeah, can't rule anything in or anything out. But my story is, when I first adopted the boys were 7 and 8, but we'd had them from when they were 2 and 3. So we were early 40s when we first started fostering, and that's when we had the boys, when they were little, very little. At that time, I had a few things wrong with me. I was working full time, but I did have a few things wrong with me that were unresolved, and a few things wrong with me that weren't going to go away. So I already had chronic asthma. So I will warn you now, I am going to go through what I have now, okay, not to bore you, but for you to get like an idea of what happens to me on a daily basis, so that I can then tell you how it affects me when I'm adopting, the good and the bad. I'm going to go through the positives and the negatives. Yeah, there are some positives of having chronic illness. I know that sounds bizarre, but there are. So I'm going to go through positives and negatives and how it affects me on a daily basis. Okay, so when we had the boys for fostering, I already had chronic asthma, which I'd had from a child. It was largely under control with meds. I had quite a bad back. Was suffering with my back off and on all the time, and I had sort of severe gynae problems which I hadn't dealt with, and no one was really pointing me in the right direction for that. But if I'd pushed harder, I know that I could have been treated. But I was so busy and wrapped up in running the business and being there for the boys, and at a point we were foster carers as well, that I did put my health on the back burner. I'm definitely going to say that I did do that. So since we sold the business, because we were running children's daycare, I've then had much more things wrong with me, many more things wrong with me. So my back is a lot worse, and I have a scoliosis, so I'm often out of line, but I have arthritis as well. My asthma is okay actually, but I've also been diagnosed with COPD, and if you don't know what that is, it's chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. I've never smoked, never been a smoker, but they think possibly passive childhood smoke is the result of that. So I've got COPD, which is a progressive lung disease. I've also got trigeminal neuralgia, which is a facial pain condition that I have to be on tablets for. And I have got restless leg syndrome, which keeps me awake a lot at night, which is why on the videos I'm always rubbing my eyes off and look tired. So I've got restless leg syndrome, and I'm just trying to think of sleep apnea. See, I can't even remember, and I've got sleep apnea, and a lot of that's been diagnosed in the last year. So sleep apnea, I have to wear a mask at night, and it's to stop me stopping breathing at night. But because I wear a mask at night, and I have restless leg syndrome. I've got tablets for that as well, but I often wake up at night. So to cut a long story short, okay, the breathing conditions, obviously I've got to be so careful with being around people with infections and stuff like that. And if I do get, poorly, I can get flare-ups and things like that. And with my back, I'm often in pain. And with my restless legs and sleep apnea, my sleep is affected, greatly affected. So I'm often tired, and I'm on tablets for the trigeminal neuralgia, which are anti-epileptic tablets which block the nerve. So they're pretty hefty tablets. So all in all, I'm on a lot of tablets, got a lot of things wrong with me, and that's the baseline, that's where we're at, okay? So I'm talking from my experience of chronic illness. And what I would say about the chronic illness as well is some of it's hidden. So the trigeminal neuralgia, hardly anybody knows about that. So there's some hidden disability in there as well, which makes it a little bit difficult to explain to people. I've just had a coughing fit and I've had to edit that out. Okay, so that's where we're at. Now, the boys are now 15 and 16. So when they were younger, the way that things would affect me before I had some of these new diagnoses is that I wouldn't be the first one to be able to join in the physical stuff. I wouldn't be the first one to get up in the mornings necessarily. I wouldn't be the first one to offer to do more physical stuff. But in my early 40s, I was able to do quite a lot. I look back at what we were doing and I think about the fact that we took them abroad, some of the activities we were doing with the boys at home. And whilst we had my adult children with us when we were fostering, I did get involved in quite a bit, and we used to go out quite a lot as well for day trips and stuff like that. So I wouldn't say I was greatly affected at that point, but now I've got all these things, I am greatly affected. And what has happened to me sometimes is just having to go to bed. All right, so what happened when I got trigeminal neuralgia before I got the adequate treatment, and even when I did originally, I was in bed a lot, and I can be in bed a little bit with my back, and obviously if I've got a chest infection, I might be in bed with that. So what it is like is everything slows down. Everything in my life has slowed down. I've had to accept that, and the acceptance of that has been really difficult. And the main reason for that is the guilt. Okay, so the first thing about adopting or fostering, if you have chronic illness, and as I say, you may not be able to go into it if you start with that, I don't know, but the main problem about it is the guilt of not being able to do some of the things with the children that you want to do. And in my early trigeminal days, I made videos where I was just really upset because Tim would go out for a day to the beach and there was no way with the level of pain, the heat, I was going to be able to do that. So the first thing you do feel is guilt. Okay, I'm going down the negatives to start with, but hang on with the video because then I'll go into the positives for you. All right, there are some. So that's the first thing. The second thing that happens to you is an awareness in the world that, there are people out there like you who are going through similar things to you are, and that actually you're going to pay a lot more attention to people who are suffering with physical and mental illness because you're going through it. And on top of that, what I would say is I've also seen some family members go through some mental illness as well. So you have an awareness now because you're going through it and you've seen other people go through it, that actually the world is not all, everybody tearing around. And like I was when I was younger, running a business, being successful, patting myself on the back because I'm making good money and all that. The world is not all like that. Not everybody has the ability to do that. And so you do learn pretty quickly that life can't be like that for everyone. So whilst you're feeling the guilt, you're also learning about the fact that you are not necessarily then the one that has to be there for the children all the time or can be there for the children all the time, and that is a fact of life. You begin to learn acceptance of that is a fact of life. The other thing with it as well is I've grown into this situation. I'm 55 now, and so for the last 5 years I've grown into the situation of chronic illness. So the boys from about the age of kind of being in this house, from about the age of 8 or 9, would start to get aware of the fact that I'm not able to do as much. And the negative thing about that, I have found, is that not necessarily for my older son, I'm going to say, although I think for my older son with learning disability, he hasn't entirely understood what is wrong with me, and might have maybe worried unnecessarily about some of the things that I'm trying to explain to him. So trying to explain to him about sleep apnea and stopping breathing and wearing a mask would probably freak him out, because he doesn't understand it, because of the language barrier and stuff with him. And my younger son, the negative thing about it is because I can't do as much for him and Tim does a lot more. Like Tim will be the one to get up in the mornings almost always. I might cook some meals. I might do a little bit of housework. But because I can't do that much physical stuff for him, he has a lot more respect for Tim. Now, I will say for both of the boys at the beginning, they much more favoured male figures anyway, and there was a reason for that. So part of this is not just the fact that I have this wrong with me. Part of this is because that's how it was for them in their home, that they probably had more respect for males. And actually, when we first started fostering, I had a little girl that was very intense around me, and so in the very, very early days when they first came, it was more Tim for them, doing things for them anyway. But yeah, I'm going to say that one of the negatives is because Tim does a lot more, especially with the younger one, they will go to him, and sometimes they won't respect my decisions because they know he's the mover, the mover and the shaker in the family. So that is a negative as well. And that's hard. The other day it was parents' evening and the younger one didn't want me to come. No, there's reasons for that. He didn't want attention drawn to him. He didn't want to even go. Yeah, so you find yourself maybe being not the favourite person to be chosen for things because you're not able to do that. And another thing is as well is if you're in chronic pain, which I often am with the illnesses, or very, very tired, the boys won't necessarily understand that. And I think part of that, sorry about my husband going by that, I think part of that is because they do have some learning difficulties and things, so they don't entirely get empathy and things like that, but they just don't really understand what it is to be like in pain all the time. They can't put themselves into my shoes, and if I'm really tired and I'm resting, often the younger one just come bursting in and just shove his phone in my face and go blah 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 blah. So they just don't always get it. So that can be so difficult. Like if I'm very tired or in lots of pain and I need the rest, but I can't get it, I find that's been very, very hard. So in the early days when I got the diagnosis for trigeminal neuralgia, particularly, I was in so much pain that I would just have to just lay there, that sometimes I would be begging Tim to do something about the noise in the house, or to do something about keeping me isolated because I just couldn't cope with the pain. So when it was in the early days of the treatment, that was so hard to deal with. Now let's move on to some positives, shall we? I'm sure my husband's going to go backwards and forwards behind me, but you know what, it's okay. So some positives about it. The one thing the boys know that I can still be there for is their emotional well-being. To remind my husband that I'm recording, I did tell him so, but it looks like it was going to do the whole hot tub thing behind us there, which would have been a bit distracting. So yeah, the one thing that I can do, because I've slowed down and therefore I can't always be there to do the other things, I can be there for the emotional support, and I know they know that. So because I haven't been busy, I haven't been running a business, I haven't been sort of involved in the rat race per se, then I'm at home a lot. And I do have a new little job coming up, but it's only going to be part-time because I can't cope with much. So they know where I am, and they know they can come to me for the emotional support. So just because I can't be the one to get up in the morning, first of all, or I'm not always the one to cook tea, or I might only be able to do a little bit of housework, I can't do all of it, it doesn't mean to say I can't order new clothes for them, or I can't ask them about a problem they have, or support them if we need to arrange counselling, or do things online for them. So there's plenty of things that I can do, And in the beginning, when I started to get all these things wrong with me, I was saying to Tim, I just don't know what I'm worth in the family because I can't do all of these things. He said, but you're there for us, you're there for us emotionally. And so I started to think of the things that I can do or I do that Tim prefers not to do anyway. So, when the new tracksuit needs ordering or the decent trainers need ordering or, somebody wants me to accompany them to a new little, like my son's got a new little volunteering job, so occasionally I pop up there and I have a coffee where he's doing his little work thing. So there are things that I can do, and I think probably I'm more emotionally attuned to the boys anyway. So I'm not asking them questions all the time, but you know that I've made lots of videos on pace, so sometimes I'll use pace to be a bit curious and empathetic about things. We were talking about the parents' evening with my younger son, and when he came back I just wanted to sound out why he didn't want me there and what sort of levels of anxiety he's experiencing. Now I'm going to say that my husband probably wouldn't broach that direct. He would struggle to know how to word it, and my son didn't want to talk about it, but I've got a much better idea now of the fact that my younger son is pretty much just surviving at school. So he's ticking over, but the high levels of anxiety he has are very similar to what my older son had. It's just that my older son was of a lower ability, so really just couldn't survive in mainstream, whereas my younger son is surviving but not enjoying. So he's only enjoying sort of the snippets of time he has with his friends, but as far as actually school and getting something out of it, he's not. Now, I was able to ascertain that my chronic illness, my disabilities and all the things that I have wrong didn't stop me from doing that. And the only time that I'm stopped from really chatting is if I'm in a lot of pain. And that's not all the time. I think with chronic illness, some people might be in pain all the time, but a lot of us find, which is part of the frustration in a way, that one day we're not too bad. So I've woken up this morning, didn't have an amazing night's sleep, but I'm not feeling too bad this morning. We're going off to pick up a car. By the time I get back, I probably will be really tired. I'm not going to lie, I probably will be, and struggling, which is unfortunately when my son would come home from school. But I'm not feeling too bad today. Tomorrow I could feel horrible, and the frustration is not knowing one day from another with chronic illness how you're going to be. I know I was speaking to somebody that I know who's got fibromyalgia. Honestly, I can't say it. Fibro, and they would call it that, and how they were expressing that one day they might be okay to do quite a lot, but then they could be in bed for 3 days. And I think sometimes that is the frustration, that sometimes you can do stuff for the children and sometimes you can't. And sometimes you've got to then safeguard, kind of making sure that you don't do too much, because then you're going to suffer for it. And so oftentimes conversations will be had about if the family are doing something, I'm going to just step out of it. And that's difficult. Okay, so this is probably another negative, but sometimes I've had to say to myself, well, I'd rather be there for the children and knock myself too much by kind of trying to push myself to do something I know I'm not able to do, than try to please everybody. And that's take a lot of learning to do. I mean, this is an extreme example. When we went away on holiday, the whole family were there. So I've got 7 children. I've got 5 birth children and the 2 sons that I've just got at home now. And they're all married, the older children. And we all actually went away together on holiday. And they decided to climb Snowdon Mountain. Now, there was no way with my back that I was going to be able to do that. And my breathing. To be honest, there was just no way. So I take these off to steaming up a bit. Now, I could have felt so guilty about not being part of that I could have gone, oh yeah, I'll give it a go. But I knew that was silly, and I think with chronic illness, whether you're bringing up children in general or adopted children, it doesn't matter. You've got to learn to preserve yourself. You've got to know how much you can do, what you can cope with, what your body can cope with. I'm married to someone, as you probably see, who's spriting around out there. He's very fit and healthy for his age, and comes from a family that are very fit and healthy. So again, that's discrepancy then is there. And sometimes it's very difficult then to say no, because yes, he looks after me, yes, he understands that I've got all these things wrong, but he's never experienced that, so he doesn't know how that feels. And sometimes I will have to say, no, I can't do that, and he'll go, oh, go on, it'd be lovely, and I'll be like, I can't do that. And I've learned to do that. And I've learned to accept that, you know, for however many years I'm put on this earth, I will be there for my sons, emotionally supporting them, trying to get them what they need, whether that be material things or whether it be emotional support, whether it be therapeutic parenting. I can still be the yin to the yang, because my husband and I are really different. I can still fill in those gaps, but I have to learn that there's limits to my capabilities when it comes to physically looking after them. So let's just backtrack a little bit. Let's remember that the boys are nearly 15 and 16, so they are increasing in their independence, and I'm so grateful that my husband's pushed for that. We didn't do that so much with our birth children. We did a lot for them, but my husband's definitely pushed for the boys to learn more about household things, learn how to use the washing machine. Now, they wouldn't do it if we weren't asking them to. I know they wouldn't, but my husband's really tried to help them with independent skills, which is greatly helping him as well as me. But let's remember they're 15 and 16. And I feel that if you end up with chronic illness early into adoption, when you've got very young children, there is only one way that you would really get through it, and that is to be, you know, not too proud and to call on people. And you're always asked about support network, but this would be different. This support network would really have to be able to step in and help. You know, if you've got a partner, then you've got someone to lean on. If you haven't, then you definitely need at least say 2 strong people that can actually step in physically and help. And if you don't have that, then you may well have to pay for extra help to come into the house, because you know, we've never done that. I don't know why. My husband's like, no, we have to do everything ourselves. That's just him. But you know, you would have to be looking outside of the box in what financial help you could get, what support you could get in the house to maintain it and clean it and the garden, or you would have to have people that were able to come in and do that for you. You'd also probably need people that are happy to take the children off your hands for a little bit. Again, we've never done that much because we've got my mum nearby, I've got adult children. But if all of this had happened earlier in our situation, and the boys are say 5 and 6, and all of this happened to me, then we would have had to have people coming in at the house quite a lot, and people that we were regularly allowing to have the children. We would have had to do that. So that'd be something that you'd have to think about. So I think it was Erin who asked me, or it could be Verity. I'm really sorry, I can't remember who it is. I think it was either Erin or Verity who asked me for this video. So she's obviously got something in mind. Either she wants to know more about my experiences, or she's just really interested for some other reason. So I hope that helps you, whichever one it is. Pretty sure it's Erin. And I just hope it's answered some of your questions. And if any of you want to become members, please do. But subscribe anyway. And I put videos out pretty regularly. So I'll see you on Fly Little Birds. Thank you.